Now to the big debate that we are talking about, the Pakistani FATF grey list and how it is looking to go ahead and circumvent this entire FATF grey list. The sword continues to hang on Pakistan. There is going to be a meeting that is going to be held in the coming months. It has been delayed because of the coronavirus pandemic, and there was a joint sitting of Pakistan's parliament yesterday, and it ended up passing 3 crucial financial action task force related legislations as part of the government's efforts to escape from being blacklisted by the global money laundering and terrorist financing watchdog. And their president Arif Alvi had to call a joint sitting of both the houses of the parliament. And in fact, a number of those legislators, a large number of the legislators from the Senate, from the lower house, had gone ahead and rejected the anti-terrorism amendment. This is the third amendment 2020 that was proposed, making it in fact an FATF legislation that has now been blocked by the opposition dominated upper house. Now in the second move, an anti-terrorism court in Pakistan yet again indicted 4 of its top leaders of the banned Jamaat-ud-Dawa, including brother-in-law of Mumbai attack mastermind Hafiz Saeed, in 4 more cases of terror financing. Pakistan is panicking ahead of the FATF session, that is very clear, and in that panic, these sham moves have been continued. Now, Pakistan claims to be working against terror financing, but reports continue to emerge on how Pakistan has actually restored bank accounts of Jamaat-ud-Dawa leaders. All right, we'll open up this debate. I have a number of guests who are joining me on the broadcast. We'll discuss all that Pakistan has been doing to try and evade from the FATF blacklist. It currently continues to be in the grey list. It's now looking forward that perhaps it could squeeze its way and get out of this grey list as well. Ambassador Suresh K. Goyal, who's a former diplomat, joins me on the broadcast. So does Major General retired Dr. G.G. Dwivedi, who's a global and strategic affairs expert. Sumit Peer is a political analyst, joining me on the broadcast as well. And so does Joyita Basu, who's the editor of the Sunday Guardian. Joyita, I'll start off with you. Yet another measure that has been taken by Pakistan. What's surprising or lack of surprise therewith, that the opposition in the National Assembly in the lower house has gone ahead and rejected every single of these 3 bills that are related to FATF. What does that indicate? Joyita, if you can hear me? Joyita, I'll have to... Okay. I think there seems to be a technical issue with Joyita's connection over there. I'll come back to Joyita. But Suresh K. Goyal, if I could ask you the same question. Why is it that the opposition has been going ahead? This is the 3rd time. This was the 2nd amendment made wherein opposition did not back the government. Then the 3rd amendment had been made. There had been a joint session that had been brought about. Again, the Senate did not support the government. But nonetheless, these 3 bills have been passed. They are all related to FATF. These go ahead and give more clause, more teeth to all those bills when it comes to managing, when it comes to regulating, go ahead and surveilling all the accounts of these terrorist organizations, Waqf board organizations that is also related to a number of these front organizations that have been opened by terrorists, the likes of Jamaat-ud-Dawa, the likes of Jaish-e-Mohammed, the likes of Elite as well. What do you think is the reason the opposition has been massively against these measures by the Pakistani government?
Megha, I'm sorry, there seems to be a problem with the audio. I cannot hear you at all. It's very low.
Okay. I'll also, we'll try to get that audio fixed, Suresh Goyal. But Major General Professor G.G. Dwivedi, can you hear me? If you can hear me, loud and clear?
Very low, but I can make out what you're speaking.
Yes, so I will like your comment first on this, about why the resentment amongst the opposition on the stand that has been taken. There is obviously internal turmoil within the Pakistani establishment, within the Pakistani territory for quite some time now, for years together, if I may say.
Well, Megha, firstly we have to understand the larger picture. And larger picture is that Pakistan is stuck between the devil and the deep sea. As far as Pakistan policy is concerned, terrorism is a very important tool to realize its national aims and interests, and they have been using this at will in different regions, against India, against Afghanistan. Now, that is one important factor. And you know, if you remember, President Musharraf had made a statement some time back that these terrorists are the heroes. They are the ones who have actually waged the war against Afghanistan, against Russians, and they are in Afghanistan. So these are very important assets of Pakistan, deep state, and especially of the military. Now, on the second spectrum is the Financial Action Task Force, which is breathing on Pakistan neck and also the world opinion, because Pakistan has been accepted now as a terrorist state, which is the epicenter of terrorism. Now, they have to balance out these two, and that is where there is a dichotomy or there is a difference between the ruling party and the opposition. Now, Pakistan has to show some actions on the ground because they are already in the grey list, and if they go in blacklist, their president has been pleading that then Pakistan will be in very dire state. So this is what is going on now, how to actually get over the FATF dilemma, and that is why all these actions are being done in the parliament. But let me again caution that most of these are symbolic. It's only to tide over this very important phase, and once they are able to tide over the FATF issue, I'm sure it will be business as usual.
Absolutely. Joyita, come in over here. If I could just, take you through these three specific bills that have been passed yesterday. Now, it's called the Islamabad Capital Territory Waqf Property Bill 2020. It is going to go ahead and regulate, manage, supervise, administer the Waqf properties. We know exactly why this bill has been brought about, to go ahead and recognize, go ahead and regulate these front organizations by a number of these terrorists. And again, this is Anti-Money Laundering Second Amendment Bill 2020. The first one had obviously been rejected by the opposition. This time around, also there was a massive rejection of 31 to 34 votes, and finally there was a joint session that had taken place, and finally the bill was passed. Anti-Amendment Bill 2020, again a third amendment to it, and now finally the bill has been passed. Who is China, who is Pakistan going ahead and trying to create this sham about, because the entire world knows what Pakistan has been up to, and still at the FATF we continue to grey list it because those three nations that are standing firmly behind Pakistan.
Yeah, you see, Megha, there are two aspects to it. One is, as my earlier panelist said, Pakistan has to, there's an FATF meeting coming up. So Pakistan has to take certain actions. And basically, and all these actions are nothing more than eyewash. I mean, they cannot possibly take action against an arm of their state, can they? I mean, as far as we are concerned, or as far as the rest of the world is concerned, terrorism is Pakistan's state policy.
Right.
That is what these people are about. It's just like, we have, people have a judiciary, democracies have, and any democracy has judiciary, executive, legislature, they have terrorism as one of those arms. The fifth pillar or the sixth pillar, whatever they have, that is what they are about. So what possible action can possibly Pakistan take? It's all an eyewash. And the other thing that they are trying to do is that the Imran Khan government that they have been trying to do, because of which the opposition is very angry, they have been passing this terrorism, a particular bill, and there is an amendment to that, by which the opposition parties are worried that the opposition leaders will be targeted. You see, so there has been major problem going on with that, and it seems like the Pakistan army has thrown in finally its lot with Imran Khan. And what is going on? The opposition parties are being pushed to the fence. So that is the reason why there is so much anger in the opposition space against Imran Khan's government.
Right, absolutely. And Suresh K. Goyal, if you can hear me now, when the likes of Iran can be blacklisted, and they have been blacklisted succeedingly in the years that have gone past, what is it that is limiting the FATF plenary to go ahead and blacklist Pakistan? Because the crimes that Pakistan has conducted when it comes to terrorism, especially against India, have been innumerable, and the latest charge sheet that has come out when the NIA has gone ahead and filed a 30,000 plus pages of charge sheet against Pakistan, against Jaish-e-Mohammed especially, and going ahead and point by point giving evidence that there has been support of the Pakistani government, there has been support of the ISI, there has been support of the Pakistani army in going about perpetrating this Pulwama attack that had taken place last year.
Yeah.
So doesn't India's case become stronger? And perhaps now is perhaps the right step to put in the right pressure and then bring Pakistan into the blacklist rather than continuing to have it in the grey list. And perhaps Pakistan is even dreaming right now, with Beijing gaining so much supremacy in all these international fora, that it might just be able to wriggle its way out of the FATF grey list as well.
Megha, the answer to your question is very simple. FATF, there are 2 or 3 countries which continue to support Pakistan and who make sure that Pakistan does not get into the blacklist, even to keep them on the list of the terrorist funding, what do you call it, grey list or whatever it is. Even that is an effort by India and the other countries, but countries like China is the main one of them, which continues to make sure that Pakistan does not get, Pakistan comes on the blacklist in the FATF, but that Pakistan does not get banned by FATF for getting any kind of support or any kind of funding from the other countries. So it's not really the genuineness of the case. It is the friends of Pakistan who continue to make it difficult really. Until they are there, I don't think that we can expect Pakistan to suffer too badly, even if there is a lot of legitimacy in the case to ban Pakistan.
Absolutely. Sumit Pir, you want to come in over here? Pakistan at the end of the day just requires 12 of those votes, very, very crucial ones. So China is going to be one, obviously, and the kind of power and pressure that China exerts on a number of Western nations, perhaps it looks like the chances of Pakistan getting into the blacklist, forget about staying in the grey list, forget about getting into the blacklist, seem very, very dim at this point of time.
I think, Megha ji, the point here is, what Joyita ji rightly said, that Pakistan and terrorism are synonyms. Let's not try to differentiate between the two. And these anti-terrorist courts and all, they're the biggest sham in Pakistan. In fact, don't we know Osama bin Laden was kept in a military cantonment to save him from America? People like Hafiz Syed and Lakvi are kept in jails to save them from, the people like India and other people who might try to get them there. So jail and these high security prisons are basically, those special centers for them to operate. Isn't it true when Lakvi was last time in the jail, he was making babies in a Pakistan jail? This is factually correct. So this jail, hartal, this fine and all is all bullshit, because the fact remains Pakistan is the only country in Asia which does not even have $1 billion of foreign exchange reserve. Because recall, ma'am, last time when Saudis recalled their $1 billion, they had to borrow $1 billion from China. So the foreign exchange reserves are all time now. This FATF sword is hanging on their head. They just need 3 people not to go into the blacklist. So Turkey, Malaysia and China are with them, they will not go to the blacklist. But it is our concerted effort and our lot of pressure and our lot of diplomatic clout, they are still in grey list. If it was not the pressure and clout of India, Pakistan would have even moved out of the grey list. So this is all orchestrated drama by Mullah Military Nexus, which does this drama at the time before the FATF meetings to show we are doing that. What happens later? It will go to a higher court. The witnesses will disappear, the proof will disappear, state will not object, or it will go to a Supreme Court where they will all free. And the only thing what we have to know is how are these people again going to make babies like Lakvi in the jail? So is Hafiz Syed kept in the jail for the punishment, or is kept in the jail as protection what they did with Osama? This is the fact of life of Pakistan. What are we discussing here? All things are to befool the world. The world has to call their bluff and tell them, sorry, we don't want to be befooled by you anymore. The fact of life remains, Hafiz Syed has a 10 million bounty on his head. So, why doesn't anybody report where he is? How can he go so freely in Pakistan? What makes him so, indispensable? Is he kept in a jail for protection or for a crime? He is kept in jail for protection now. So these all characters will be going to the jail, having a very nice time there. And after a few months, you'll see them walking around on the streets of Lahore and Wazirabad and Mirpur and doing what they're best at.
Absolutely.
Terrorism and terrorism.
In fact, G. Dwivedi coming over here, that was obviously going to be the next successive question for me to all my guests over here. What about Hafiz Saids of the world? What about Masood Azhars of the world? Pakistan, let alone going ahead and admitting that yes, they are these terrorists that are residing within its own territory, it refuses to acknowledge the fact that they even exist over there. So the point, and then it goes about blacklisting and going about putting maybe the brother-in-law of Hafiz Saeed in its list as a terrorist, as a designated terrorist. You talk about the brother of Maulana Masood Azhar. His name had also come out, his nephew's name had also come out in that NIA's charge sheet again, the Pulwama case. These names do pop in once here and there, and then after a few years we see that these lists also get reshuffled. These names also get disappeared, and primarily the two main important players over here that have been provided safe havens in Pakistan, in the jails, and then later on in these secure havens like Sumit Peer had already mentioned. We talk about Hafiz Saeed. He's being put in a very, very safe locale so that there is no way that there can be any sort of surgical strike that can be taken by India or United States or India that had happened in Osama bin Laden's case. Something of the sort cannot happen at this point of time, but at the end of the day, perhaps our surveillance capacities need to increase so as to pinpoint these people, figure them out, and then take it in our own hands and not wait for the FATFs of the world to take action against Pakistan, but do it our way, because there are crimes, these are perpetrators that have continued to hurt India, not just once, not just twice, but several times in the past, right from the hijack that had happened, the Kandahar hijack that had happened. There was that exchange, and after that we have not been able to catch Masood Azhar ever.
Well, Megha, the point at issue is that these terrorists like Maulana Masood Azhar or Hafiz Saeed, they are very, very valuable asset for Pakistan. Like they are both of the nuclear, weapons. So these are almost like parallel nuclear assets as far as the terrorism is concerned. They are protected at 3 layers. Firstly, if you take China, and last year to get the Maulana Masood Azhar to be declared as a terrorist under the UN 1267 resolution, Chinese went out of the way and they actually vetoed number of times. Why? Because Chinese needs these assets also for their own interest. First and foremost, they don't want any trouble in Xinjiang. So Chinese always have our hand in glove with these people that we look after you but don't create any trouble in Xinjiang. Then they want to also protect the CPEC, where they are sunk in more than $60 billion, and they want to protect these against the Balochistan Liberation Army. So therefore, they are very important assets at the international level for the Chinese, so Chinese protect them. Second important issue is judiciary. Pakistan judiciary is actually not independent. They are under the influence of the army, and they call the shots as per the army's interest served. So therefore, they can be locked up when required, then they are taken out when they are, the crisis is over, and they are well protected. They are handled by ISI. Their health has been taken care of. They are given treatment in the military hospitals. So therefore, they are well protected. And third important issue is that these assets will never be compromised until Pakistan changes the policy of terrorism and stop using them as tools, and that is not going to happen anytime soon. So therefore, this game is going to continue, the sham is going to continue. As the crisis of FATF is over, these guys will be back, as usual, and they'll be serving the interest of Chinese, of Pakistanis, and of the Pakistani army.
Right, absolutely. Joyita, what's concerning at this point of time is that India is fighting a two-pronged war, one from the eastern sector line of actual control, and the other side LOC, where infiltrations also are coming in vis-a-vis the number of ceasefire violations that we have seen of the Pakistani forces that continue to increase. Let's take a look at the infiltrations that have been taking place, but which have also further increased. There have been instances wherein infiltrations have taken place from the Gujarat border as well. There are infiltrations that have taken place from the Nepal border as well. There was information that had come in from the intelligence sources that there are these camps that are built along the Nepal border, and wherein now with porous borders that Nepal goes ahead and aligns with China, and again China going ahead and perpetrating terror into India by way of providing weapons, by way of providing ammunition to these terrorists from Pakistan, and now the Afghanistani Taliban talks that are now lingering, in China getting itself into the position. It is going to be a multi-pronged war that India is going to be having to fight against all these, especially China as a big massive nation that is going to be the puppeteer, and all these other puppet governments and puppet organizations that are going to be playing at the hands of China against India. China's role continues to become more and more concrete. How do we go about fighting this?
The thing is, first of all, Megha, I mean, if you look at it, conventional war, no war has started as yet. What we are anticipating is that there is going to be a two-front war. Whatever is going on is right now eyeball to eyeball situation where we are standing there, the two armies. Let us hope it does not escalate into an actual war or conflict. Because if that happens, which way things will go, we don't know. You know, whether the whole LAC kind of starts, we have to start fighting and all that. So let us not talk about that. That is much more serious. What is going on right now in terms of, you see, I think it looks like that what Pakistan is doing along the LOC in terms of this cross-border firing, this constant cross-border firing that is going on, they're escalating the situation. Number one is basically to ensure the infiltration of terrorists. That is one reason. And the other is, you see, even if when you are going to talk about, even if we can handle Pakistan in case there is a two-front war, or I mean, even in case we can handle Pakistan, in case even Pakistan is not getting involved in an actual war, what it will be doing is, you see, they will be tying down a section of our armed forces along their border, along the LOC and all. That way, that is the way that they can possibly help China. So I think this whole part is basically trying to intimidate us. You know, of course, I totally agree that it is totally China's doing. This whole intimidatory tactics that is going on, trying to, this LOC and the LOC both are hot for us right now. So how do we deal with it? We basically stand up to the bully and say, sorry, we are not going to be bullied. I mean, if you are going to do it to us, we are going to give you a bloody nose and you are going to get a bloody nose. We are not standing down. That is what we have to do. And if you can take care of China, Pakistan will be taken care of for good.
Sumit P, better late than never. China is now the focus, and a good thing that China is now in focus. But the point at the end of the day is that China continues to occupy at several fronts, on the eastern, on the western, and then there are terrorists that are being infiltrated on various other borders of the country. When it comes to the Bay of Bengal, when it comes to the Arabian Sea as well. How exactly should we not fall into this Pakistani-Chinese tactic?
I think, Megha ji, the Pakistan and China, to seeing them as a common enemy is a new reality of life, and we cannot separate the two. Because Pakistan is like a hired gun of China. I mean, that has traditionally always been a hired gun of somebody or other. Today, these mercenaries in Pakistan work for Chinese. So they are, you see, the Z is in a lot of hot water. He has just around a month maximum to go for the last push. The most of the intelligence communities in the world are warning us that they will go for the last push, because for the last 5 months, PLA has been rendered useless in those mountains. We have stopped them. We have stopped their wheel of aggression. So they will try to go for the last push. They might and they will possibly use Pakistan. Few news which are out in the market on the media are that 4 Pakistani air bases, we have seen a mix of Pakistani and Chinese planes. So propaganda warfare, a joint front with Pakistan and all is what they will come to. I agree with Joyita ji, but we have to stand where we are as far as the mountain warfare contains. Our army is much better than Chinese and Pakistan put together. We can handle both of them. Even if you look at the Harvard studies recently, they have said India will not only be, heavy on them. India will defeat them if they try to do anything against India. So we have the advantage with us, and we have a battle-hardened army. We don't have to worry. We have the best CDS, best defense minister, best EM, and the very capable prime minister. Under these leaders, military and the diplomatic and our elected leaders, we don't have to worry, but we have to call this Chinese bluff, because salami slicing has been happening for 60 years. This has to stop somewhere down the line. And now it's just a month's time. After that, China has to go back home. They can get nothing out of this. This aggression of Xi has failed in black and white. That is what even the international media is saying.
Absolutely. I mean, all my guests over here make very pertinent, important
Can I make a
points.
quick point, Megha? 2 seconds.
All right, Joyita. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, the thing is, you see, taking on from what Sumit Peer said, just because he is failing, all the more reason he is more dangerous. He will do something to save his face. So let us be prepared for that.
Megha,
All
can I
right.
make a very quick point?
Yes. Okay, one quick point and then we'll have to wrap this up.
Yeah, situation, we have to wait and watch. Currently, we are not in the threshold of war. We are still in the escalatory ladder and we are somewhere in the midway. Now, Chinese are not interested to get into the war situation, but as yet, they will not like to give way. So, this situation is going to go on. Park collusion will be there. We'll have to stand fast, and we don't have to go by Harvard studies. Guys like me have spent better part of life on the borders. We will be able to take care of China, and Chinese will learn the lesson, but it's going to be a long haul.
Absolutely. It is going to be a long call. It is, in fact, on the line of actual control. There is a long battle that is looming during the winter months. I thank all my guests over here. And Joyita, of course, like you said, Xi Jinping has been cornered. He is going to make that big step, and there perhaps going to be a big, massive mistake. And that's exactly what India and the entire world needs to eye on to go ahead and bring down Xi Jinping and the CCP establishment.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.